Get your filthy black hands out of my door, black stinking beggar!
Caroline Whitmore's voice pierced the chilly atmosphere of Park Avenue. The man in the crumpled hoodie didn't flinch. He stood motionless amidst the falling snowflakes.
Ma'am, I'm here for a meeting. A meeting.
Wash off that stench of sewage from your clothes first.
Could you please double-check my schedule?
Her lips curled. She stepped closer, close enough for him to smell her perfume, jasmine, expensive and intoxicating.
Get out!
Ma'am, just one phone call to your office, please.
Her face flushed. No one had told Caroline Whitmore what to do. A meticulously groomed hand reached out. She grabbed a lock of his braided hair. She yanked hard. What Caroline didn't know, which she was about to discover, was who the man she was grabbing by the hair really was. 5:30 in the morning, Tribeca. The penthouse lights were off. Anthony Dawson sat in the same leather armchair he'd been sitting in for 3 days. He hadn't moved much. He hadn't slept in his bed since Tuesday night. He couldn't go in there yet. The coffee table told the story. An empty box of tissues, 3 cups of tea, all cold. His phone face down. 47 missed calls since Wednesday. A handwritten list of people he needed to call about the funeral on Sunday. He hadn't called any of them yet. In the kitchen, untouched containers of food covered every surface. Neighbors had been coming by. His mother-in-law had brought soup yesterday. He couldn't eat. Even the smell of bread made his stomach turn. Her name was Elena, he would tell a reporter 4 months later. We met at Wharton in 1998. She taught 3rd grade for 24 years. She read Mary Oliver every Sunday morning. She cooked for me every Friday night for 21 years. Last week she was fine. Mondays she said she had a headache. By Wednesday morning she was gone. He stared at the calendar on his phone. 8:15. Whitmore Hayes closing walkthrough. His attorney, Gregory Sterling, had called Wednesday afternoon as soon as he heard. Tony, postpone it. Everyone will understand. Anthony had refused. 40,000 employees across 14 companies were waiting on this deal. He couldn't drop it at the last minute. He stood up. His knees cracked. His back was stiff from 3 days in the chair. The walk-in closet was full of suits. Dozens of them. Brioni, Tom Ford, custom Savile Row. He stood in front of them and tried to lift a hanger off the rod. His hand shook. The hanger slipped. He left it on the floor. He pulled open the bottom drawer of the dresser. Inside was a Marine Corps hoodie his foster father, Gunny Earl, had worn home from his last deployment. Anthony had kept it for 28 years. He pulled it on over a flannel sleep shirt. The fabric still smelled faintly of his father's aftershave, even after all this time. Carhartt pants from the garage where he kept his gardening tools. Old Timberland boots by the door. That was enough. He needed to leave. He didn't look in the mirror. If he had, he would have seen what he couldn't bear to see. A man who looked like he had given up. By 6:45, he was on the 6 train heading uptown. He always took the subway. It kept him close to where he came from. A young mother across the car looked at him. Red eyes, gray stubble, wrinkled hoodie, the faint smell of 3 days of grief, and slid 2 seats away. She pulled her little girl tight against her hip and pretended to look at her phone. Anthony didn't notice. He was staring at his own reflection in the dark window. He didn't recognize the man looking back. He turned his face away. A young man across the aisle had been watching him. College kid, maybe 20, backpack on his lap, MBA textbook open. He squinted. His eyes went wide. Sir, excuse me, are you Anthony Dawson? Anthony nodded once. The kid opened his mouth to ask for an autograph, to say thank you for last fall's lecture at Wharton, something. And then he really looked at Anthony's eyes. He saw it. The grief sitting there like a stone. He closed his mouth, started over. Thank you for your Wharton talk last year, sir. It meant a lot. Then he went quiet. He gave Anthony the gift of being left alone. It was the last bit of kindness Anthony would receive for hours. 20 blocks uptown, Caroline Whitmore was finishing her espresso in her Upper East Side dining room. Her mother, Margaret, sat across from her in a silk robe, sharp as ever, even at 74. "Your brother should have had that chair, Caroline. Edward only gave it to you because Henry died. Don't ever forget that." "Yes, Mother." Her hand shook as she set the cup down. Margaret pretended not to notice. 45 minutes later, Caroline walked into her office on the 36th floor. On her desk sat an 80-page briefing book on Anthony Dawson, prepared 3 weeks ago by her strategy team. She had signed for it. She had never opened it. Rebecca Sinclair knocked on Caroline's office door at 7:50. "Mrs. Whitmore, I have some difficult news. I received an email this morning from Gregory Sterling at Dawson Capital. Mr. Dawson's wife passed away on Wednesday. Sudden stroke. The funeral is Sunday. Mr. Sterling says Mr. Dawson still plans to attend the closing meeting but is asking us to keep it brief." Caroline waved her hand without looking up from her monitor. "Fine, thank you. Keep the meeting short. I don't need any formalities." Rebecca hesitated by the door. "Should I send flowers on behalf of the firm?" "You handle it." "And there's one more complaint from Sarah Donnelly. She's threatening to break the NDA." "Bury it. Raise the settlement number if you have to." Rebecca walked out. Caroline didn't ask Elena's name. She didn't ask when the funeral was. She didn't ask what church. The information slid off her brain like rain off a windshield. Within 8 minutes, she had completely forgotten that Anthony Dawson's wife had just died. Down on the sidewalk, Daniel Brooks was sweeping snow off the welcome mat. He had been the day shift security guard at this building since 1995. He had 3 grandkids, knees that hurt in winter, and 21 years of NYPD experience before he traded the uniform for this one. He looked up and saw a man in a hoodie walking toward the entrance from the subway stairs. Daniel's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Tony? Tony Dawson?" Anthony looked up. The smallest break of a smile crossed his face. The first one in days. "Daniel." They embraced. Daniel held him tight for 10 full seconds. He could feel Anthony shaking through the thin hoodie. "Tony, my God, I just read about Elena. I'm so sorry. Why are you here, brother? You should be home." 40,000 employees, Daniel. I can't postpone. You want me to come up with you? Steve can cover the door." "Thank you, brother. I'll be okay. Sign the papers and go home." Daniel didn't believe him. Anthony's eyes were red-rimmed. His hand trembled when he reached up to adjust his hood. Daniel decided to stay close, just in case. Anthony walked through the revolving door he had walked through 5,000 times in his life. He had been a junior analyst at Whitmore Hayes from 1996 to 2000. Walter Hayes, the dead Hayes whose name was still on the wall, had hired him personally, mentored him, given him $10,000 in startup capital when he left to launch Dawson Capital. Anthony had paid it back inside 6 months. Walter had framed the check. Now he was back to buy 14 companies from the firm Walter had built. At the reception desk, a young woman in her mid-20s looked up from her monitor. "Good morning, welcome to Whitmore Hayes. May I help you?" "Good morning. Anthony Dawson. I have an 8:15 with Caroline Whitmore." Her name was Hannah Bennett. She had been at this desk for 8 months. She studied law at CUNY at night. She didn't watch CNBC. She didn't read Forbes. She looked at her schedule. There it was, 8:15. A Dawson Capital, closing walkthrough. She looked back at the man in front of her, wrinkled hoodie, 5 days of gray stubble, eyes red and swollen, the faint smell that came with too many days of grief and not enough sleep. She had been trained to call security when something didn't add up. This didn't add up. "Sir, can I see some ID?" "Of course." He handed her his New York State driver's license. She looked at the picture. She looked at him. The picture showed a clean-shaven man in a tailored suit. The man in front of her looked like he had slept in an alley. "One moment, sir. Please, have a seat." She picked up the phone. Upstairs, Caroline answered on the second ring. "What?" "Mrs. Whitmore, I have a gentleman here who says he's Anthony Dawson. He has a license that matches. He has the 8:15 on the schedule, but he looks... I'd like to verify before I send him up." "Looks like what?" "He's wearing a hoodie, ma'am, work pants. His shoes have mud on them. He looks like he hasn't slept." A long pause. Caroline's mouth tightened. "That is not Anthony Dawson. That's a vagrant trying to scam his way into the building. We've been having more of them since the city stopped enforcing loitering laws. Don't send him up. I'll come deal with it myself." 8 minutes earlier, Rebecca had told her that Anthony Dawson's wife had died and that Anthony would be coming in looking unwell. The information had already evaporated. Caroline walked into the elevator with 2 internal security guards behind her. She told her assistant she'd be back in 10 minutes. She didn't grab her coat. She wasn't going outside. She crossed the lobby with the click of expensive heels on marble. 8 bystanders looked up. Hannah pointed toward the leather chair where Anthony was sitting with his head in his hands. Caroline stopped 6 feet away. "Sir, I'm Caroline Whitmore. I understand you're claiming to have a meeting with me?" Anthony looked up. He stood slowly. His knees ached. He didn't extend his hand. He knew it was shaking. "Mrs. Whitmore, Anthony Dawson, I apologize for how I look. I've had a difficult week. If you could just let me upstairs, we can handle the paperwork in 15 minutes. A kind person would have noticed the swollen eyes, the tremor, the way his voice cracked on the word difficult. A kind person would have asked one question. "Are you all right, sir?" Caroline didn't ask. She looked at him, and she saw what she had already decided to see. "A difficult week? Sir, I don't let homeless men into my building because they're having a difficult week. Get out." Anthony closed his eyes for a moment. Pain passed across his face like a cloud. He opened them again. "Mrs. Whitmore, here is my driver's license. Here is my business card. Here is the contract. Please, call Gregory Sterling. His number is on the cover page. He emailed your office this week." She picked up the license, glanced at it, set it back on the reception counter without really looking. "Anyone can have a driver's license." She raised her voice now so the whole lobby could hear. "Sir, I've been in finance for 20 years. I know what investors look like. They do not walk into my lobby smelling like they slept in a sewer." A few heads turned. A middle-aged woman waiting for the elevator frowned. A barista holding a cardboard tray of coffees slowed down. Anthony kept his voice level. He was holding on by fingernails. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm asking you one more time. Call Edward. One phone call, 30 seconds. Edward is not in the office, and I don't need to call anyone to know that I am not signing a billion-dollar deal with a man who is crying in my lobby." That landed. Anthony's jaw tightened. He breathed in through his nose, held it. Caroline set down her coffee cup hard. The lid popped off and brown liquid splashed across the counter. She didn't look at it. Her eyes were locked on him. Then she did something that broke the lobby's polite silence. She reached out with one finger and flicked his driver's license and business card off the reception counter. They landed in the slush of melted snow that had pooled on the floor by the door. "Pick up your trash and leave my building." The lobby went dead silent for 2 full seconds. Anthony looked down at his license. His face, the clean-shaven version of himself, taken 3 years ago, was face up in dirty water. His voice changed. He wasn't trying to persuade her anymore. "Mrs. Whitmore, I will not pick those up. You will pick them up. I will have you arrested." The middle-aged woman from the elevator stepped forward. Her voice was loud and angry. Excuse me? You just knocked his ID onto the floor. What is wrong with you? Caroline whipped her head around. This is my building. I don't need your opinion. This is a public commercial lobby, and I just watched you assault a customer. A young man in a charcoal suit, mid-30s, had been heading toward the door. He stopped. He squinted at Anthony. His face changed. Wait, I know you. You're Anthony Dawson, from Dawson Capital. I saw you speak at Wharton last fall. Anthony nodded once. He didn't take his eyes off Caroline. The young man's face went chalk white. He pulled out his phone, not to film, to call someone. Mark, get over to the Whitmore Hayes lobby right now. Something's going on. I don't know how to explain it. Just get here. Caroline turned slowly toward the young man. She had felt the floor shift beneath her feet. She had felt the lobby turn against her. But Caroline Whitmore had been raised by Margaret Whitmore, and Margaret Whitmore had taught her one rule above all others. Never retreat. Never admit. Never apologize. So she did the only thing her training allowed. She doubled down. Caroline took 2 steps toward Anthony, close enough that her perfume mixed with the smell of grief on his hoodie. She put her hand flat against his chest. Not hard. Hard enough. She pushed. I said, get out! Anthony didn't move. Not an inch. He was 6 feet tall and 190 pounds and 20 years out of the Marines, and his body knew how to absorb force. He looked down at her hand on his chest, then back up at her face. His voice came out very quiet. Mrs. Whitmore, you just put your hand on me without my consent. Take it off. Now. Daniel Brooks crossed the lobby in 3 steps and put himself between them. He didn't touch Caroline. He held one palm up, the way they taught him at the academy in 1985. Mrs. Whitmore, please, step back. Daniel, if you put your hand on me, I will end your career within the hour. Ma'am, I was a patrol officer for 21 years. What you just did is assault under New York Penal Law 120.00. I am asking you to step back from this gentleman and return to your office to wait for Mr. Whitmore. You're fired too, effective immediately. Hannah Bennett came around the reception counter with her phone in her hand. Her voice was shaking, but her words were not. Mrs. Whitmore, I am calling 911 right now. No, I will call 911. Put that phone down. Hannah didn't put the phone down. She started dialing. Anthony had been watching this whole time. He had tried polite. He had tried legal. Neither had worked. There was only one tool he had left, and it was the one his foster father had taught him the year he came home from the Marines. He took 1 step back. He let his hands fall to his sides, palms open, empty. He didn't say a word. He just looked at her. Behind his eyes, a memory was playing. Elena on the couch Sunday night, 2 days before the stroke. She had been laughing at something. She had reached over and put her hand on his arm. Tony, you are too good to people who aren't good to you. One day it's going to hurt you. She had been joking. She had been smiling. She had no idea she had 2 days left. Now he was standing in a lobby and a woman was pushing him and screaming at him, and he couldn't feel anything because Elena had taken all of it with her when she left. Caroline was on her phone now, talking fast and loud. Yes, hello, 911? I have an aggressive homeless man harassing customers outside my office on Park Avenue. He smells of alcohol. He's threatening me and my staff. We need officers immediately. Every word of it was a lie. Every word was being recorded on a federal-grade voice line that would be subpoenaed in 18 months. Anthony said nothing. He just watched her. The middle-aged woman by the elevator gasped. Oh my God, she's lying. She is lying on a 911 call right now. We are all hearing this. A man in a maintenance uniform walking through the lobby stopped. I'll testify. I just saw her knock his papers off the counter. I'll testify. The young man in the charcoal suit was back on his phone. "Mark, please tell me you're close. She just attacked him. She is calling 911 to lie about him." And then a new voice spoke. Quiet, steady, old. "Lord have mercy." A woman had been sitting in the lobby waiting area the whole time. Black, in her early 70s, gray hair pulled back into a tight bun, a heavy coat draped over her shoulders, a church program from last Sunday peeking out of her purse. Her name was Loretta Williams. She had been a third-grade teacher in Harlem for 38 years before she retired. She was here this morning to meet her great-nephew, who worked on the 11th floor. She got up slowly. Her knees hurt. She walked across the lobby with the dignity of a woman who had been doing this her whole life. She stopped beside Anthony. She didn't say a word to Caroline. She just looked at her. The way a grandmother looks at a child who has done something unforgivable. The way a Sunday school teacher looks at a deacon caught stealing from the collection plate. Then she turned to Anthony. Her voice dropped to a near whisper. "Son, I see you. I see you." For the first time in 3 days, Anthony's eyes filled with tears. He clenched his jaw. He held them back. But Loretta Williams saw what nobody else in the lobby had been willing to see. That this man was carrying something so heavy, his bones were bending under it. She put her hand lightly on his forearm. She didn't move. Caroline hung up on 911. She looked at the elderly black woman standing beside Anthony like a shield. She looked at the maintenance worker, and the woman by the elevator, and the young man in the suit. She looked at the 11 people now standing in her lobby, refusing to be invisible. Something inside her broke. The thing that broke was not shame. It was the part of her brain that knew how to retreat. She stepped forward fast and raised her right hand high. She swung. Her open palm came down toward Anthony's face. He tilted his head 3 inches to the left. Marine training. No retreat, no flinch, just a small motion of the chin. Her hand whistled past his cheek. The force of her own swing pulled her off balance. She staggered half a step forward. Anthony still did not move. He did not raise a hand to defend himself. He did not raise his voice. He did not raise a single finger. Loretta said it again. "Lord have mercy." The young man in the charcoal suit said into his phone, "Mark, she just tried to slap him. She missed. Get here now." Far down the avenue, sirens started. Anthony finally spoke. His voice was so quiet the lobby had to lean in to hear him. "I'm going to leave this lobby. Not because you told me to. Because my wife died 3 days ago, and I cannot stand in the same room with you for 1 more minute without saying something I will regret saying." The lobby froze. Caroline froze. "Your wife what?" He didn't answer. He bent down slowly. He picked up his license. He picked up his business card. He wiped them on the front of his hoodie. He put them in his pocket. He turned and walked toward the revolving door. Loretta called after him, soft and clear. "God bless you, son." He pushed through the revolving door. Daniel followed 2 steps behind, sweeping the lobby with his eyes to make sure nobody else got close. Hannah came around the desk with her phone still active to 911, the real call this time. Caroline stood frozen in the middle of her lobby. Her 2 internal security guards were standing 6 feet away. Neither had moved during the entire incident. The senior of them, a man named Frank, who had worked at this building for 12 years, was staring at the floor. He would not make eye contact with her. She turned. She pushed through the revolving door after Anthony. She had no plan. She had no thought. She only had the feeling that this man she had decided was nothing, was about to walk away from her lobby having won something, and she could not allow that to happen in front of her own staff. Outside, the cold hit her face. Anthony was standing 10 feet to the right of the door, his back to her, his cracked phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking quietly to Gregory Sterling. He was not looking at her. He was treating her like she did not exist. That was the final insult. She crossed the sidewalk in 4 fast strides. Her right hand came up. She grabbed the back of his head, a fistful of his locks, the same hair Elena used to oil for him every other Sunday, and she yanked, down and to the side, with everything she had. "I said, get out!" His hood came off. His wool hat hit the slush. His reading glasses flew out of his free hand and shattered on the granite step. His phone slipped from his other hand and cracked on the sidewalk for the second time that morning. Several strands of his hair came out at the root. Caroline held them between her fingers without realizing what she was holding. Anthony's training kicked in 3 seconds late. For 3 seconds, his hand twitched at his side. He saw it, his right hand wrapping around her throat. The training never went away. It just taught you to stop. What stopped him was not the Marines. What stopped him was Elena. He heard her voice. "Tony, don't give her what she wants. You are better than this." He did not move his hand. He did not raise his arm. He kept his palms open. He did this for her. He did this for everything she ever was. Daniel Brooks arrived between them and pushed Caroline back half a step without touching her. "Mrs. Whitmore, back up now." Caroline stood there with Anthony's hair between her fingers. She looked down. Her face went the color of paper. 2 NYPD officers rounded the corner on foot. The older one, Sergeant Patrick O'Malley, 26 years on the job. The younger one, Officer James Hollis, 16 months out of the academy. O'Malley took one look at the scene, the elderly woman holding her hand on Anthony's forearm, the security guard between them, the blonde executive on the sidewalk with strands of hair between her fingers, the broken phone, the broken glasses, and he knew exactly what kind of morning he was about to have.
"Sir, are you all right? Can you tell me your name?"
"Anthony Dawson." O'Malley nodded slowly. The name sounded familiar. He couldn't place it. He turned to Hollis. "Run him." Hollis pulled out his phone. He typed the name into Google. The first image that loaded was Anthony Dawson on the cover of Forbes magazine, 2022. The second was a Bloomberg Businessweek feature from 3 weeks ago. The third was an obituary published yesterday. Elena Marie Dawson, beloved wife, 3rd grade teacher. Funeral Sunday at St. Patrick's. Hollis showed the screen to O'Malley. O'Malley exhaled hard through his nose. He turned to Caroline. "Ma'am, I need you to stop talking. Stop talking."
"Officer, that ID could be fake. He could have a weapon. People like him—"
"Ma'am, stop talking." Caroline closed her mouth. A black Lincoln pulled up to the curb behind the officers. The rear door opened. Edward Whitmore stepped out, 72 years old, silver hair, expensive overcoat. He had been on his way to the 815. He saw the cops. He saw his niece. He saw the elderly black woman with her hand on Anthony's arm. Then he saw Anthony's face. He had seen that face 2 months ago at the Marine Corps Foundation Gala. They had sat 2 tables apart. Edward had introduced Anthony to his wife. They had taken a photo for the charity wall. Edward also remembered something else. He had personally signed Anthony Dawson's offer letter as a junior analyst in June of 1996. Walter Hayes had brought the resume into Edward's office and said, "This is the one. Hire him." Tony. Oh my God. Tony. Edward crossed the sidewalk and pulled Anthony into a tight embrace. Anthony, for the first time in many hours, let himself break. He cried into Edward's coat for 30 full seconds. Edward held him. When Anthony stepped back, Edward turned toward Caroline. His voice came out the temperature of January. "Caroline, You just pulled Anthony Dawson's hair on my sidewalk. Did you know his wife died on Wednesday? You received an email from his attorney 2 days ago. Rebecca briefed you this morning. I personally approved flowers with your signature on the card. You signed without reading. I don't remember, because you didn't care. That is the difference. Caroline's mouth opened. No sound came out. Anthony spoke, exhausted. Edward, I'm going to come inside. 15 minutes. Then I'm going home. Edward nodded. He turned to the internal security guards who had finally come out through the revolving door. Escort Mrs. Whitmore to her office. She is not to speak to anyone. She is not to touch her computer. She is not to delete a single email. Counsel will meet her there. I will deal with her in 20 minutes. The security guards approached Caroline. Frank, the senior, finally looked at her. There was nothing in his eyes. He had worked here 12 years. He had watched her treat the cleaning staff like they were invisible. He had said nothing for 12 years. He was not going to say anything now. But he was also not going to protect her. They led her back through the revolving door. Loretta Williams said something quietly to Anthony before he went inside. Someone needs to be with you after, son. Don't go home alone. Daniel's calling your pastor. Anthony nodded. He couldn't speak. Up on the 38th floor, Edward sat Anthony down in the boardroom. He poured him a glass of water. He did not offer coffee. He did not speak first. Anthony took a long breath. Edward, the contract on the table is the final purchase agreement. It needs both signatures this morning. I'm not going to sign. Edward nodded. He had felt it coming. For the last 6 months, my legal team has been quietly interviewing former employees of this firm. 31 of them. I do not enter a deal of this size without cultural due diligence. I bought into your reputation. I needed to know if the reality matched. He pushed a folder across the table, thick, bound, notarized signature pages. 28 of those 31 interviews named Caroline, by name, with specifics, racial slurs, sexual comments to junior staff, the phrase, "the help," used about a black assistant in front of partners. Edward's hand went to his mouth. There's more. 9 HR settlements over 6 years, paid out as severance, hidden from your audited financials. That's securities fraud, Edward. I have 8 of those 9 victims willing to testify if you release them from their NDAs. Sarah Donnelly is one of them. There's a 10th complaint she filed last week. Rebecca buried it this morning while you were in your car coming here. Edward closed his eyes. Walter would burn this building down. No, Anthony said. Walter would fix it. That's what he taught me. So that's what we're going to do. He pulled out a single typed sheet from his messenger bag and slid it across the table. These are my terms. Edward read the page. He read it twice. His eyes stopped on the last item. Tony, the Elena Marie Dawson Teacher Scholarship Fund, $10 million from corporate reserves, funded annually, in perpetuity. She bought her own classroom supplies for 24 years from her own paycheck, Edward. I want her name on something good, something that will outlive both of us. Edward set the page down very carefully. His voice was thick. All of it. Approved. Every line. The fund especially. I'll sign the resolution today. Thank you, Edward. Tony, I don't know how to ask you for anything ever again, but I am going to ask you one thing. Will you let me call your pastor for you while you go home? Anthony nodded. He couldn't speak. He stood up slowly. He walked out of the boardroom. He pressed the elevator button. The doors opened. He stepped inside. He pressed L. The doors closed. Halfway down, he slid to the floor, his back against the mirrored wall, his knees up to his chest, his face in his hands. He cried for the entire ride. 3 minutes, 38 floors, The first time in 3 days he had let himself fully fall apart. When the elevator opened at the lobby, he stood up. He wiped his face on the sleeve of the marine hoodie that had belonged to a man who had taught him how to survive things like this. He stepped out. Loretta Williams was waiting. So was Daniel. "Your pastor is on the way to your apartment, son. We're going to put you in an Uber. I'm going to ride with you. Daniel's coming too. We are not leaving you alone tonight." Anthony's mouth trembled. He whispered, "Thank you." Up on the 36th floor, Caroline sat at her desk. She had not touched her computer. Counsel had told her not to. She had 10 minutes alone before Edward came back with the formal termination package. She opened her email. She scrolled back 2 days. There it was. Gregory Sterling. Subject line, "Family matter update regarding Friday closing." She clicked it. She read the first paragraph. "Mrs. Whitmore, I am writing to inform you that Mr. Dawson's wife, Elena, passed away suddenly on Wednesday morning following a stroke. The funeral will be held Sunday at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Mr. Dawson intends to attend Friday's closing, but has asked us to keep the formalities brief." She read it again. She read it a third time. She stood up. She walked to the window. Outside on the sidewalk where she had pulled Anthony Dawson's hair, 3 people were still standing. Loretta Williams was loading Anthony into the back seat of a black SUV. Daniel was helping. Caroline picked up her phone. She dialed her mother. Margaret picked up on the second ring. "Caroline? Mom, I just pulled the hair of a man whose wife died 3 days ago. I didn't know. I had the email. I didn't read it. Mom, Margaret's voice came across the line cold and clean. "Don't call this number again, Caroline. The Whitmore family does not recover from this. You have done your job." The line went dead. Caroline stood in her office holding the silent phone. She looked at the framed photo of her brother Henry on her desk. 28 years old in that photo. The year he died of an overdose. She picked up the frame. She threw it at the wall. The glass shattered. She slid down to the floor next to her desk. She did not cry for Elena. She cried for herself. Edward came in with 2 corporate attorneys and 2 uniformed officers, and Daniel Brooks, who was now the new head of building operations as of approximately 11 o'clock this morning. Edward did not sit down. "Caroline, you are terminated for cause effective immediately. Surrender your laptop and your phone and your badge. Counsel is here to observe." She tried every excuse a human being has ever invented. She tried family. She tried misunderstanding. She tried anxiety. She tried not knowing. She tried, "If I had known who he was." Edward stopped her on the last one. "Caroline, you did know. Rebecca told you. The email told you. The flowers told you. You did not care. That is the only thing the law will need to prove. Walk out." The walk through the lobby was quiet. No press, no cameras, just the lunch crowd and the FedEx guy and the people who used to nod to her on her way in. On the sidewalk, Loretta Williams was still there, just standing there, watching. As Caroline passed, Loretta did not say a word. She just looked. Caroline turned her face away. Caroline Whitmore was arrested 3 days later. She turned herself in at the 19th Precinct on a Sunday morning at 9:45, the same morning, at the same hour, that Anthony Dawson stood at a podium inside St. Patrick's Cathedral and began to read his wife's eulogy. Her criminal attorney, David Chambers, walked her through the front door. There were no reporters. The story had not broken yet. The processing took 90 minutes, 3 charges: assault in the 3rd degree, aggravated harassment in the 1st degree with a hate crime enhancement, and falsely reporting an incident in the 1st degree. She was released on her own recognizance by lunchtime. She drove herself home. Her mother did not answer the door. 6 blocks south, the funeral ended. 600 people had come. Anthony stood at the front for nearly an hour, shaking hands. Daniel Brooks stood 3 feet behind him the whole time, the way a man stands when he is determined that nothing else bad is going to happen on his watch. Loretta Williams sat in the 5th row. Edward Whitmore sat in the 3rd. Hannah Bennett sat alone in the last row, holding a small bouquet of white tulips, the kind Elena had grown in pots on her windowsill. Anthony saw Hannah on his way out. He stopped. He took her hand in both of his. "Thank you for what you did Friday morning. Elena would have been proud of you." Hannah cried. Anthony hugged her. The story broke on Monday. Sarah Donnelly was the first to come forward. She had been Caroline's assistant for 2 years. She had signed an NDA in exchange for a settlement and the letter of recommendation that had never come. On Friday afternoon, Gregory Sterling had called her personally and told her the NDA was void. She did not post a video on TikTok. She did not tweet. She wrote a 4-page letter under oath in front of a notary public in Queens. She mailed it to the U.S. Attorney's Office, the SEC, and the New York State Division of Human Rights. She also mailed a copy to a reporter named Olivia Hartwell at the New York Tribune, whose work on the Wells Fargo case she admired. 6 more women followed Sarah within 7 days. By the end of the month, 11 of them. Olivia Hartwell took her time. She spent 4 months on the story. She interviewed 34 people. She pulled 6 years of HR records. She got Rebecca Sinclair, terminated and facing her own charges, to flip and cooperate. Rebecca handed over a flash drive with every settlement memo Caroline had ever signed. The phrase, "the help," appeared in 3 of them. The article ran on a Sunday morning above the fold, 6,000 words. The headline, "The Day a Grieving Husband Was Attacked on Park Avenue." Anthony gave Olivia the only interview he would give about the entire incident. 1 tape recorder, no camera. They sat in his Tribeca office. He spoke for 90 minutes. He talked about Elena. He talked about Walter Hayes. He talked about his mother, Loretta Dawson, who had cleaned offices at an Atlanta bank for 24 years and was never promoted past line supervisor. He talked about Gunny Earl. Olivia asked one question near the end. "Mr. Dawson, do you regret how this all played out?" He thought for a long time. "I regret that Elena isn't here to see it. She would have hated it. She would have told me to forgive. I can't forgive her, not yet, maybe someday. But that's the most honest answer I have." The trial began 6 months later in Manhattan Criminal Court, Judge Patricia Beaumont presiding. Caroline had lost 20 pounds. Her hair was pulled back tight. No family was in the gallery for her. Edward was there, at the prosecution's specific request. The state played the 911 tape first. The whole courtroom heard Caroline lie about an aggressive homeless man with the smell of alcohol on his breath. The jury watched the body cam footage. They saw Daniel's notebook with timestamps. They heard from 5 eyewitnesses from the lobby. They heard from Loretta Williams. She testified for 19 minutes. Her voice never went above conversational volume. "I stood next to Mr. Dawson. He never raised his voice. He never raised his hand. He looked the way my own son looked the week his wife died, like he was carrying a world too heavy for one man. The defendant grabbed his hair. I saw it. I will die with that picture in my head." 5 of the 11 prior victims testified. They described the same pattern in different words. The prosecutor introduced Caroline's signed receipt for the 80-page Anthony Dawson briefing book. 3 weeks unopened. She introduced Caroline's signed approval of the funeral flowers from the firm to Elena Dawson. Never read. She introduced the email from Gregory Sterling delivered 2 days before the incident, opened 46 minutes after the assault. When it was Caroline's turn to make a statement before sentencing, she stood. The courtroom expected a rehearsed apology. Instead, she said, "I don't think I'm going to learn anything from this if I pretend I'm going to learn. I was raised to believe that there are kinds of people and there is an order to them. I do not know if I can stop believing that. I do not think that makes me better. I think it makes me more honest. That is all I have. She sat down. Anthony rose to read his victim impact statement. He kept it short. My wife died 3 days before Caroline Whitmore attacked me. She did not know. She had the email. She had flowers signed in her name being delivered to Elena's funeral. She did not know because she did not care. I am not asking this court to sentence her for the hair. I am asking this court to sentence her for the moment before the hair. The moment I said I had a difficult week, and she did not ask me why. That is the crime. The not asking, the not caring. The pulling of the hair was just the way it showed itself. Judge Beaumont gave her 3 years state prison, suspended to 18 months active confinement, 5 years probation, $250,000 in restitution, 1,200 hours of community service at a homeless shelter, and a permanent SEC bar from the U.S. financial industry. Edward Whitmore published an essay in The Atlantic 2 weeks later. The title was My Niece, My Failure. He resigned from his church board, his country club, and the trustees of 3 foundations. He began volunteering as an adult literacy tutor in Harlem. Forbes pulled their Women to Watch cover. Yale Law rescinded an Alumni Service Award. The 14 companies stayed where they belonged. 1 year later, the same January, the same snow. The building on Park Avenue had a new name above the door. The brass letters read, Hayes Asset Management. The Whitmore name had come down in March. Inside the lobby, a black and white photograph of Walter Hayes hung on the east wall, taken in 1985. Beside it, a smaller photo of a young black analyst named Tony Dawson, sitting at a desk in 1996, smiling at something off-camera. A third photograph hung between them, a woman in her 40s surrounded by 20 third graders. The plaque underneath read, Elena Marie Dawson, 1976 to 2025. She taught us all. Daniel Brooks stood by the front door in a tailored gray coat, head of building operations now. His 3 grandchildren had full college funds. The eldest, Tasha, had started at Howard the previous fall on a full ride from the Brooks Family Scholarship. Anthony walked through the revolving door at 7:30 in the morning, the same door he had been pulled through 1 year ago today. He was wearing a suit, tailored, charcoal gray. The marine hoodie was folded in a cedar chest at home next to Elena's 3rd grade lesson plans. Daniel embraced him. They stood there a moment without speaking. Anniversary, brother. Anniversary, brother. Anthony went upstairs. He met with the new CEO of Hayes Asset Management, a woman named Patricia Foster, vetted by an independent search firm Anthony had personally named. They talked for an hour about a new partnership, a pipeline program, 40 paid summer internships per year for first-generation college students. At noon, Anthony drove out to the cemetery. He brushed snow off the headstone. He set down fresh tulips. He sat on the small marble bench he had installed last summer. He talked to her for a while. He told her about the building name change. He told her the Elena Marie Dawson Teacher Scholarship Fund had distributed grants to 1,044 New York City elementary teachers in the first year. He told her about Loretta Williams becoming like a second mother to him. He thought Elena would have loved that. He told her he still couldn't sleep in their bed. He was trying. He told her about the grief counselor he had started seeing in March. He told her he loved her. He told her he had not forgiven Caroline Whitmore. He said he knew Elena would have wanted him to. He said he was working on it. He said it might take the rest of his life. He sat with her a while longer in the cold. Then he drove back to the city. People sometimes ask me if I regret how this story ended. There are days I haven't. There are days I have. I don't trust people who say they always feel one way about something like this. I think they're lying. What I know is this. I did not build that pain. I only stopped swallowing it. There is a difference. Anthony Dawson did not need Caroline Whitmore to recognize him as a billionaire. He needed her to recognize him as a person who was hurting. The lesson of this story is not, be nice to strangers because they might secretly be rich. That's the wrong lesson. The right lesson is simpler. You do not know what the person in front of you is carrying. Kindness is not a luxury. Kindness is the floor. So here's what I want to know in the comments below. I read every one. Have you ever been Anthony Dawson, standing somewhere you had every right to be, carrying the heaviest thing you had ever carried, while someone in a nicer coat tried to make you feel like you didn't belong? Or have you ever been Mrs. Loretta, the grandmother who stood in the snow next to a stranger and whispered, "I see you"? Because that is how justice actually gets built, by the people who do not look away. If this story moved you, hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe for more stories where justice isn't a coincidence, it's a consequence. And one more thing before you go. Ask someone if they're okay today. You don't know what they're carrying. I'll see you in the next one.
The story is over, but one thing keeps sticking with me. We think a kind person is someone who doesn't do bad things, doesn't kill people, doesn't hurt anyone. That's enough, right? But this story taught me something different. Not doing harm isn't kindness. That's just not being cruel. Real kindness is when you see someone hurting and you stop to ask one question. Anthony said one sentence in that lobby, "I have had a difficult week." Nobody asked him what difficult. They saw a wrinkled hoodie, red eyes, 3 days of stubble, and decided they didn't need to know more. That's the scary part of this story, not the slap, not the hair pulling. It's the moment before, when a man told a room he was hurting, and the room decided it wasn't their problem. We have all done it. The coworker who comes in tired and quiet. We don't ask. The friend who takes rules quick. We throw a heart on it and scroll past. We are not bad people. We are just busy. But to them, those two things feel the same. So let me ask you, when was the last time someone said, "I'm having a hard week," and you stop to ask why? This week, ask one person, just one. If this story moved you, drop a comment. I read everyone. Hit like, subscribe. Next week's story, I still can't believe it's real. I will see you next time.